All right, guys, what's going on? Professing Preterist back at it again. Wanted to do one last stream of the year. So it is December 31st here. In the stream I want to do today, going to be drawing some connections to First Thessalonians 4, Exodus 19, and Deuteronomy 31, confirming a spiritual return of Christ. I would say that First Corinthians 15 and First Thessalonians 4 are the last two places that futurists can really go to try and justify a physical return of Christ. And I'm going to show today. I've never seen anybody make this connection before. So this is, to my knowledge, never before divulged or discovered information. But I want to talk about First Thessalonians 4. We'll start with that and then kind of go into how in the Old Testament we're seeing Paul just draw from what happened in Exodus 19 and Deuteronomy 31, and applying it spiritually to the audience of the first century. So let's start here. We can start verse 13. It says here, "But we do not want you to be unknowing, brothers, concerning those being made to slumber, lest you may be saddened, so as also the rest who are not having expectation. For if we faith that Jesus died away and rose again, thus we faith also that God will lead together with him those who are being made to slumber through Jesus. For this we say to you by a word of the Lord, that we, the living, who are being left over into the presence of the Lord, will not, yea, not come prior to those being made to slumber." So I want to stop right here and just talk about what Paul is expounding on with these first three verses. Okay, so Paul is saying, "Hey, don't worry about those who are dead, because they might have an expectation of, wait, well, what's going to happen to the dead people?" Because all of First Thessalonians, the first three chapters, is Paul actually talking about the living people that he's writing to. He's telling them, hey, don't worry, you guys are going to get respite from the persecution that you're facing. And we'll kind of go into that. We'll divulge into that a little bit. But that's why in verse 13 he says, "But hey, concerning those who are dead," right? So those who are not alive, who are not able to read this letter I'm writing to you, these people actually come first. So that's why I'm saying it's, hey, don't be saddened, right? Don't worry about that, because they actually get resurrected. They are going to get their inheritance, their promise. Okay? So yes, we get changed, but they come first. The dead get serviced first. Okay? And look at what he says here in verse 16. "Since he, the Lord, will descend from heaven in the shout of command, in the voice of the archmessenger, and in the trumpet of God." So again, this is emphatically talking about the trumpet of God, the same trumpet of First Corinthians 15, the same trumpet of Isaiah 27, the same trumpet of Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 22, all of it discourse language. Same trumpet as Revelation 10, Revelation 11. And this goes so much deeper than a lot of people realize. The trumpet being blown, actually, it harkens back to the feast days. Okay. It harkens back to how the Day of Atonement was called in. It harkens back to how God was when he descended upon Mount Sinai. Right. It harkens back to that. Most importantly, it also is the consummation of a of a jubilee year, and we'll go into that too. How it's the fulfillment of specifically on. It was in a jubilee year that the Day of Atonement, the day of the so you've got Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, and then Sukkoth. Those three feast days would actually be signaled in by a trumpet being blown only in a Jubilee year. So this trumpet of God is the eschatological final consummation of the trumpet. Okay. It is like at the end of it all, that's when this trumpet sounds. And so the died ones in Christ will rise first. Thereupon, we, the living, who are being left over, we at the same time will be robbed together with them in clouds. Okay, so let's stop. This is where we get to where futurists are trying to be like, see, this has got to be the future. This has got to be literal. This has got to be a physical return of Christ, and we physically get caught up. Okay, so the living people who are being left over, we at the same time will be robbed. This is harpazoed. Okay, so the word harpazo, it does mean like to indicate when you're like snatching something from somebody, you're taking something from somebody. It's like stealing. That's why it says we will be robbed. Now, we'll go into why that word is important. And then he says, together with them in clouds, into the Lord's coming, to encounter in the air, and thus we will always be together with the Lord. So futurists they take these two verses, verse 16 and 17, and they try to say, see, we're going to get raptured, and then we're going to be in the air with Christ forever. Okay. Let's first of all talk about this word will be robbed, this harpazo. It's talking about taking something from somebody and making it one's own possession. Okay. So what Paul is alluding to here, okay, what Paul is drawing on here is the fact that the believing people were going to be taken away from something that thought it had possession over them and placed into something new. My opinion, my belief is that he's talking about them being under the old system of worship, the curse of Adam. So those believers, those living, believing people were going to be removed from the curse of Adam, robbed from it, and placed in the possession of Christ, which is the new covenant, the undoing of the curse of Adam. Okay. But let's look at the order of events here. So being moved from the curse of Adam together with them. So that's being the dead. So the dead are in the grave. They're in the curse of Adam still. They had not gone to heaven. They did not get their promise or their inheritance yet. So they were as well being robbed from that curse of Adam, placed into Christ. So when he says with them in clouds, okay, this is hearkening back to the clouds that went around the top of Mount Sinai. It's drawing that same imagery. And they're in clouds into the Lord's coming to encounter. Now, this word encounter is apentasin. It is a Greek word that is used in very specific circumstance when people would leave somewhere to meet a dignitary and escort the dignitary back to where they left. So let's talk about, first of all, how that doesn't work for a rapture, okay? Because the belief of a rapture is it's Christ coming down, we're meeting him, and then he's taking us with him. That's not how apentasin works. Apentasin is Christ coming down, we meeting him, and us escorting him back to where we came from. So with this encounter or this apentasin in the air, this is also into, this is ice. So look at what he says here. It's in clouds into the Lord's coming to escort into the air, and thus we will always be together with the Lord. So, what he's pretty much saying is this encounter is into the air. So they're having to go into the air to escort Christ back onto to earth. People are very misinformed on on what's being talked about here. Okay, so what futurists will believe or try and claim is, well, see, we get sucked up into the air and then we're in the air with Christ, and that's how we are for the rest of eternity. But that's not what Paul is talking about. Let's look at the proof text here. Okay, we're going to go to Deuteronomy. Actually, no, let's go to Exodus first. We'll go to Exodus 19. So, Exodus 19 is paramount to understanding what First Thessalonians 4 is talking about. This is the arrival at Sinai. And let's look at, we'll start at verse 9 and we'll kind of go down from there. So verse 9 says, and Yahuwah spoke to Moses, here I am coming to you. Okay, so do you understand now what, like, first of all, this escorting of Christ into, like, right, going into the air to escort him back is just like how God is telling Moses, I am coming to you. So God is leaving somewhere to come to Moses, okay? But it says, in the thicket of the cloud, in order that the people will hear when I word with you, and they even will faith in you for Eonian. Now, this is, again, incredibly powerful language because God is now identifying Moses as a type of Christ. The people will faith in Moses because of what Moses represents. Moses was about to go meet God, and God was going to speak to Moses, and all of the congregation of Israel and the mixed multitude that was with them that left Egypt are going to hear what God is saying to Moses. And because of that, right, this is causative language here. Because of that, they are going to have faith in Moses. They will faith in Moses in order to, because they're going to know this man is the conduit by which God is going to speak to us. Okay. So let's look here. And Moses told the words of the people to Yahuwah. And Yahuwah spoke to Moses, go to the people, and you hallow them the present day and the day after, and they wash their covering garments and become prepared ones for the third day. For in the third day, Yahuwah will descend before the eyes of all the people on Mount Sinai. So again, let's stop here and talk about this. The third day is that representation of Christ being raised on the third day. And in Hosea, they say after 3 days what does it say? He will resurrect them, basically. Let's see what Hosea says exactly. I think it's Hosea 9. Yeah, if only I probably should have memorized what chapter of Hosea it is. Maybe it's Hosea 12, 13. Maybe it's 7. Where is it in Hosea? No, it's Hosea 6. Okay. So look at this. Let's start verse 1. It says, go and we will return to Yahuwah, for he tore us and he will heal us. He struck and he will bandage us. He will enliven us from the end of a double day onward. In the third day, he will raise us up and we will live before his face. This is absolutely talking about a covenantal renewal of life. Okay. Now, going back to what's being talked about here in Exodus 19. That's why it says, in the third day, I will descend before the eyes of all the people on Mount Sinai. This third day is God consummating that covenant and bringing this marriage onto Israel. So from the end of a double day onward, in the third day, enlivening and being raised up. It is absolutely drawing on the fact that in the third day in Exodus 19, God would descend before the eyes of all the people. Now, the first thing you need to ask yourself is, well, how did God descend? Well, he tells you it was going to be in the thicket of the cloud. Okay. This is exactly what Christ is talking about when he says he is going to be coming on the clouds of heaven, coming in the glory of the Father. These clouds are physical clouds in this reference in Exodus, but they represent in the following books of the Old Testament, the God coming on clouds and the thicket of clouds is judgment language. Okay. So God didn't physically descend down, right? People didn't physically see God. God doesn't have a physical form, but they were going to see him before the eyes of all the people. He was going to descend down. And you set a border round about the people, speaking, guard you yourselves to go up on the mountain or to touch its end. Everyone touching the mountain, to die he will be put to death. Not may a hand touch it, for to stone he will be stoned, or to aim at he will become an aim. Whether animal or man, he will not remain alive. Only in the drawing out of the sound of the Jubilee horn. Okay. So again, when this Jubilee horn would sound, they will go up on the mountain. So let's go back here real quick to 1 Thessalonians 4. In the trumpet of God is when this stuff would happen, right? This trumpet would sound, then they would be going to meet the Lord in the air. And that is so important because God says only when the horn sounds, when the trumpet sounds, will they go up on the mountain. Do you see the parallels here? This is a physical mountain in Sinai in Exodus 19. It is a spiritual mountain that would be climbed in 1 Thessalonians 4. And I'm going to be able to prove that as well. But anyway, so let's go on. It says, and Moses went down from the mountain to the people. So this is now a type, right? Moses is descending down off the mountain, just like God is going to descend down out of heaven onto the top of the mountain. And Moses goes to the people, to the congregation of Israel. And he hallowed the people, and they washed their covering garments. Okay, this is emphatic language of Revelation 22. Blissful are those rinsing their robes, so that their authority will be, but it is as the authority to the wood of the life, and they may come in by the gates into the city. So do you understand here? They are hollowing themselves in Revelation 22:14 by washing or rinsing their robes. Just like Moses had these people wash their covering garments. They were physically washing their clothes. When Christ returned in AD 70 and consummated the new covenant, we now have access to the New Jerusalem by the washing of our clothes, of our robes in Christ. They wash their robes in this water, the living waters, which is also the blood of Christ. And most importantly, it's talking about, and this goes back to 1 Corinthians 15, a changing of clothes. So this is, I mean, and this goes back again to Zechariah 4, which Jude 1:9 is referencing when Yeshua had his robes changed. They were covered in excrement, and then he gets new clothes. So I'm going to go right there real quick, so that way you guys know I'm not just making this up. In Zechariah 4, or I'm sorry, Zechariah 3. Zechariah 4 is in reference to Revelation 11, though. But in Zechariah 3, look what it says here. And Yeshua was clothed with raiments soiled with excrement, was standing before the faces of the angel, the messenger. And he spoke to the standing ones before his faces, faces, speaking, turn away from him the raiments, the one soiled with excrement. And he spoke to him, see, I have caused to pass beyond your deviance away from you, and I clothe you with raiments of freed ones. Right? Gets new plumage on his head. He gets new raiments. He's changing his clothes. So in Exodus 19, Moses is having these people wash their clothes, but the clothes would be actually changed out, 1 Corinthians 15, when Christ would return. But he spoke to the people, become prepared ones for the third of the days, and do not come along into a maness. So they weren't to have sex, they weren't to lie with a woman. And it became in the third day, while the morning came to be, that there came to be voices and lightnings and a heavy cloud on the mountain, and the voice of the shofar, hold mighty exceedingly. And all the people who were in the camp trembled. So the shofar, the voice of the shofar, this is that blasting of that trumpet. Okay. And Moses brought out the people from the camp to encounter the Elohim, and they stationed themselves in the nether part of the mountain. And Mount Sinai smoked all of it by reason of the faces of him who had descended on it, Yahuwah in fire, and its smoke went up as smoke of the blast furnace, and the whole mountain trembled exceedingly. This goes right back as well, guys, to at the end of Revelation, at the end of the seven seals, the end of the seventh trumpet, and the end of the seven bowls of wrath. This is the same thing that happens. There's voices. They hear they see lightnings. There is shaking, right? This is literally typifying what happens here in Exodus 19. Exodus 19 is crucial to understanding eschatology. Okay. So it says here, and the voice of the shofar became more and more, and exceedingly hold having. Moses worded, and the Elohim answered him with a voice. And Yahuwah went down upon Mount Sinai to the head of the mountain, and Yahuwah called for Moses to the head of the mountain, and Moses went up. So now we're getting this same imagery of 1 Thessalonians 4. Moses is meeting God at the top of this mountain, and God is coming down in clouds and in fire, right? It's a very very dramatic scene. There's lightning. The shofar is blasting louder and louder. The people are freaking out. The congregation of Israel are like, oh my God, what is going on? Like, I mean, could you imagine? Could you imagine seeing this happening in real life? You would be like stunned, right? And Yahuwah spoke to Moses, go down, testify against the people, lest they destroy the border to Yahuwah in order to see, and many of them fall. And even the priests, the one coming along to Yahuwah, do hollow themselves, lest Yahuwah breach against them. And Moses spoke to Yahuwah, the people are not able to go up to Mount Sinai, for you have testified against us, speaking, set a border for the mountain, and you hollow it. And Yahuwah spoke to him, go down, and you go up again, you and Aaron with you. But the priests and the people do not destroy the border to go up to Yahuwah, lest he breach against them. And Moses went down to the people and spoke to them. So you see that there is a direct correlation here with Exodus 19 and 1 Thessalonians 4, this meeting of the Lord in the air to apantasin, to bring him back down to the people. This is absolutely typological, because when Moses goes back up to God and gets the covenant, gets the 10 commandments, and then gets all the laws, the Levitical laws, and he goes back down to the people, he is escorting God back down to the people. And I want to go to Deuteronomy 31 to verify this, okay? So in Deuteronomy 31, it says, and Moses went and worded these same words to all Israel. And he spoke to them, a son of 120 years, I am the present day. I am not able anymore to go out and to come in. And Yahuwah spoke to me, you do not pass over this very Jordan. Your Yahuwah, your Elohim, he is the one passing over before your face. He will exterminate these same nations from before your face. Again, this is all plural. Faces, really. Paneh is plural. okay, plural construct, that you will rightfully obtain them. Joshua, he is the one passing over before your faces, as Yahuwah has worded. So, what is Moses doing here? He's passing the, uh, you know, uh, spiritual torch over to Yeshua. He's like, okay, I was the type of Christ, and he is the greatest of all types of Christ, by the way. But now he's passing the torch over to Yeshua. He's like, okay, he is the one that's before your face is going to pass over, as Yahuwah has worded. So God told Moses, hey, you're passing the torch. Moses, you're 120 years old. You're not going to go into the promised land. You're going to die before you get there. And Yahuwah has done to them as he has done to Sihon and to Og, the regents of the Amorite, and to their earthland, whom he exterminated. And Yahuwah has given them up before your faces, and you have done to them according to all the commandment which I have commanded you. Have hold and be firm. Do not fear, and do not become shewed by reason of their faces. For Yahuwah your Elohim, he is the one walking with you. He will not let you loose, and he will not leave you. Okay. This is where it gets the nail in the coffin. This is talking about when the Israelites were going to enter into that promised land. To them, back here, this is physical land borders. These were the promises that were given to them and given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And it was fulfilled in this new generation that entered into the wilderness. Exited out of the wilderness, out of the exodus of the wilderness into this land. When they did that, Yahuwah would be the one walking with them. He would not let them loose, and he would not leave them. Do you see the train coming yet, ladies and gentlemen? 1 Thessalonians 4, when they escorted the Christ from the air back to earth, they would always be together with the Lord. He would not leave them. Israel was entering into a physical land. We enter into Christ. Christ is the true Israel. He is the true promise, the true inheritance. Okay? When we would do that, we are in a covenant that would never end. So we would always be together with the Lord. This is absolutely pivotal to understanding something. 1 Thessalonians 4 is Paul drawing on Exodus 19, drawing on Deuteronomy 31, with the consummation of the new covenant. They were the people of 2000 years ago. Paul is writing to these people, telling them that it was going to happen to them, that they were going to be part of this new covenant. Now, the most important thing to realize is, according to Hebrews 11, I want to say. No, it's 12. Sorry. Okay, so look at what Paul is doing here in Hebrews 12:18. He is writing to first century Jews, first century Israelites, bloodline of Abraham people, okay? But he says, "For you have not come to the mountain being touchingly grasped and having been made burning with fire and dusk and gloom and whirlwind." He's drawing directly off of what we just read in Exodus 19. But he's telling them it is not a physical place, right? And to the echo of a trumpet and to the voice of talks, which those hearing did refuse when word was set to them, for they did not carry that, being before thoroughly charged, as if a hunting beast should come into contact with the mountain, it will be cast with stones. And thus fearsome was that being fantastic, that Moses said, extraordinarily fearing am I, and extraordinarily trembling. But you have come to Mount Zion and to the city of the living God, to the heavenly Jerusalem, and to 10,000 of messengers, to the all convocation, and to the outcalled of the aforeborn ones, those having been recorded in the heavens, and to God, the judge of all, and to justified spirits of those accordingly accomplished, and to Jesus, the mediator of the young covenant, and to the blood of sprinkling, speaking better beside that of Abel. Whoa. Do you let's talk about what's being like. I don't know if everybody understands and grasps the concept here. They came to a not physical mountain, but they have come to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God and the heavenly Jerusalem. You do not touch it, ladies and gentlemen. Paul just said it. You do not touch it. He is drawing a equivocation to the physical thing that happened on Mount Sinai to the new covenant, the spiritual thing. Okay, need to get some water real quick. So I've been live for 32 minutes here, and I am almost 100% certain that I have just expounded upon something that has never been expounded upon before. I could be wrong. Please let me know if I am. If you've heard this before, I've never heard anybody say this. Now, obviously, I have heard people talk about Hebrews 12, 18 and following. But to be able to definitively tie it to 1 Thessalonians 4, Exodus 19, Deuteronomy 31, Hosea 6, 1 Corinthians 15, to be able to tie them all together, it proves without a shadow of a doubt that this is all spiritual fulfillment. Mount Zion, city of the living God, heavenly Jerusalem. The myriad of angels? Really? Now, importantly enough, too, Galatians 4. It's talking about heavenly Jerusalem here, and he's contrasting it to Mount Sinai. Paul is literally contrasting Mount Sinai, the physical mountain, to the old covenant, and the new covenant to the Jerusalem above. But it's a place that is not touched. You do not come to the mountain beingly, touchingly grasped. You do not touch it. You cannot touch it. It's not physical. So, knowing that he's drawing the direct comparison between the old covenant and Mount Sinai and the new covenant in heavenly Jerusalem, I mean, it's over, ladies and gentlemen. 1 Thessalonians 4, it's over. I mean, there's no way that you can take this now and try and say, no, this is about a physical thing. It's a physical return of Christ. It's physical, us physically being raptured up. No, it's not. It's a spiritual fulfillment of Exodus 19, confirming the spiritual fulfillment of Deuteronomy 31, where God told Israel, I will always be with you. Well, we're always together with the Lord in the new covenant. So I really want you to think about that. And again, in Exodus 19, it's talking about the third day being made hollow. You know, it's the important day, this third day. But at the same time, in Hosea 6, the third day would be when they would be raised up and they would live before his faces. And 1 Corinthians 15, the whole chapter is literally Hosea. Paul is like condensing down Hosea in 1 Corinthians 15. That's why he quotes Hosea 13, right? Death is down drunk into that which conquers. Death, where is to you that which conquers? Death, where is to you the stinger? So Hosea 13, 14. Out of the hand of Sheol, I do ransom them. From death, I redeem them. Where are your stingnesses, death? Where is your pestilence, Sheol, or pestilenceness? Mind changing secrets itself away from my eyes. So, yeah, that's literally how the Bible works, ladies and gentlemen. It is one cohesive thought, and it's beautiful. And when we compare the body of Moses and the body of Christ being the body being talked about in 1 Corinthians 15, and now we can take 1 Thessalonians 4 and compare that to Exodus 19 and Deuteronomy 31 and Hebrews 12, 18, and following. Yeah, no. Futurists, you have no shot anymore. You've got no chance, Um, that's that's really all I've got for today. I will be expounding upon this more and more as well. Um, I mean, this is like absolute solidified concrete evidence that AD 70 is the return of Christ, or was the return of Christ. In the context of the first century authors, they are awaiting AD 70. That's literally what they're awaiting. That is their blessed hope. The coming of the new covenant. That blessed hope would come when Christ would return. The people would have their robes changed, right? Our clothing got changed out from the clothing of Adam to the new clothing of the new covenant. And again, in case you guys have missed it before, Genesis 3:21, and Yahuwah Elohim made for Adam and for his manes gowns of skin and clothed them. That was physical garments from a physical animal atonement. That's the clothing. When you look at Leviticus 8, I want to say. Yeah. Look at this. Okay. Leviticus 8:7. Actually, well, let's start 5. And Moses spoke to the witness troop. This is the matter which Yahuwah commanded to do. And Moses let Aaron and his sons come near, and he bathed them in water. This is baptism, physical baptism. And he gave on him the gown and cinctured him with the sash and clothed him with the coat and gave on him the ephod. And he cinctured him with the strappage of the ephod and bound round him with it. Clothing with the coat. Literally what happens here in Genesis 3. They are clothed them, he clothed them in gowns of skin. So us getting these new clothes, being transforming from the old covenant, those that were that got robbed from the way that the curse of Adam operated and being held by Christ. And again, another important thing to note about too here is this is physical baptism, right? He bathes them in water. This is baptism. We do not need to get physically baptized, ladies and gentlemen. Physical application, spiritual fulfillment. We are spiritually baptized in Christ. Ephesians 4. Hence I beside call you, I, the bound one in Christ, to walk worthily of the calling through which you were called, with all humility and meekness, with farness from grimming, bearing one another in love, being diligent to guard the unity of the Spirit in the bonding of the peace. One body and one Spirit, so as you also were called, in one expectation of your calling. One Lord, one faithing, one baptism. One God and Father of all, who is upon all and through all and in all. So, To recap, 1 Thessalonians 4 is a spiritual fulfillment of Exodus 19 and Deuteronomy 31. What I did want to also mention here, when it talks about them needing to go into the air to escort him, right? That's where this escorting happens. We meet him in the air, we escort him back down. The reason why it's in the air is because Moses climbed a physical Mount Sinai. He physically climbed up into the air. But this is a Mount Zion that is not physical. So you take away the physical aspect of it, it's going up into the air. Also, important to note, the word air in the first century, to a Hellenistic mindset, that was the realm of the spiritual. So Paul is using language that these first century Gentiles in Thessalonica would have understood to be, oh, this isn't physical. We're meeting him in the air, in the spirit realm. Why? Because there's no physical mountain to climb to meet him, right? And again, the old covenant being brought back down by Moses was God coming back down to the people. The new covenant coming down from the heavenly Jerusalem out of heaven is Christ being with us. Thus, we'll always be together with the Lord. So that's all I've got for today. Hopefully, this sheds more light on everything. And I feel like we're reaching a terminus point here where futurists just have nowhere else to go. They will not have any other verses to try and run to or chapters to try and run to. 1 Corinthians 15 and 1 Thessalonians 4 on lockdown right now with full preterism. And yeah, there's nothing these people can do. I truly hope that everybody just comes to the realization of the truth, which is that Christ returned in AD 70, and we are the beneficiaries of that new covenant. We are the beneficiaries of thousands of years of promises. Okay. From whatever happened in Genesis 1:1 to AD 70, however much time that is, whether it was a million years, a bajillion years, or 2,000 years, or 4,000 years, whatever. Okay. Those promises were consummated in AD 70, and we are the beneficiaries of those promises. And I think that is the beauty of preterism, and it just makes me happier than anything to know that God kept his promises. That's how we can prove God is real. And in my heart, I know God is real because of what was talked about in the book, the holy book, the Bible. So anyway, until next time, guys, take it easy.